Hello everyone, how's it going? This is a video that I've been wanting to make for a long time, and I finally did it. I took the leap. I ditched Windows on my main PC and I switched to Linux. I've been wanting to do this for a long time, but I just never got around to it. So you're probably wondering what really pushed me over the edge. Um, Really, it was Microsoft's aggressive push towards Windows 11 and their decision to bake AI deeper and deeper into their operating system. I just realized, I value my privacy and it just wasn't for me anymore. So as you can see from this screen, I've got a fresh install of Linux Mint. For those of you that don't know, Linux is a operating system that's free and open source. There's a bunch of distributions of Linux. So think of a distribution as like a particular flavor of the Linux operating system. So there's tons to choose from. So I've got a fresh install of Linux here. And what I'm going to do in this video is see if I can install all of the typical programs that I used in my Windows operating system. So yeah, if that's interesting to you, stick around. We'll go through how to install the tools that I typically use. We're going to do game development. We obviously are going to need a game engine. I believe I've already got it downloaded. So we're going to change directory to my downloads folder, and then ls will list all the files and folders in that directory. And so we've got the Godot. We need to extract the zip file. So you can see that we've got this file right here that came from the zip folder. And if I run the file command on it, it is a executable. So we can just go ahead and run that. If that's an executable for Godot, what I like to do is I'm going to go back to home. So this little tilde character is how you get to your home. You can see that I'm at my home. And so what I like to do is I like to make a folder. So this is make directory called programs. And so let's go ahead and go into programs. There's nothing in here, we just made it. Let's make a directory called Godot. Let's go inside, change directory to Godot. And now we're gonna copy over that file from downloads and place it right here, which is the period. So now you can see we've got this right here. So now we're gonna go ahead and run that. And there you go. Got the game engine. Looks like it's running just fine. Godot is super lightweight, one of the reasons I love it. And so yeah, we've got our game engine. So that was easy. All right, so the next thing we need to install is a text editor for programming. Technically, Linux has text editors. You could technically program here in the terminal window if you wanted, but I like to use VS Code. I know what you're thinking. I said goodbye Microsoft, and here I'm using VS Code. You can get the open source kind of alternatives to VS Code, but we'll just go ahead and grab VS Code. So go over here. And since I'm running Linux Mint, Linux Mint is based off of Debian. Well, really, Linux Mint is based off of Ubuntu, which is based off of Debian. That's why we have this .deb file. We'll go ahead and download that. Okay, so that's going to go ahead and get downloaded. And so we're going to clear this out. I'm going to switch to, remember the little tilde character means starting from home. We're going to go to downloads. And then We've got that deb right there. And so to install this, we're going to do sudo. In Linux, sudo is basically the command you use to do things as administrator or root if you're not the root user on the system or the administrator. So since we're installing something, we need sudo. And then we use this Debian package -i to install. And we're going to go ahead and grab the latest version. Go ahead and install the latest version. It's now going to ask for my password since I'm trying to do something as the administrator or root. We're going to go ahead and give the password. If I can type it correctly. And now we wait. So once you get to this screen, it's basically asking you if you want to add Microsoft's signing key and the VSCode package to your normal package list. The official VSCode isn't part of the standard packages that come with Linux Mint. So you can go ahead and say yes here, and then every time you update your system, VSCode will update as well. Or if you select no, you'll just have to manually update it yourself. All right, that's finished. So we'll go down here. Just type VS Code, Visual Studio Code right there. Give that an open. All right, there we go. All right, next up we're going to cover sound. So when we need to make sound effects or do any sort of audio processing, typically what I've used in the past is Audacity. So we're gonna do a search for Audacity. Click on that. Download Audacity. And it looks like it recognized that we're running Linux. We've got the app image right here. So app image is basically like a portable executable that'll run on almost all distributions of Linux. So it's not like a .deb specific to Debian. It is an app image. So for those, like we did before, let's go back to our home, go to programs. Let's make a folder, make a directory for Audacity. Then we'll go into there. Let's copy from downloads. The Audacity Linux. We'll copy that to here. And then if you want to run this from the command line, it needs to be executable. So to do that, we do this chmod plus X. So let's give it the executable permissions. And I think you can just double click on this in the file explorer and it'll probably start. So you probably don't have to do this. But now it's green, which means it's executable. So we can do a dot. So in the current directory, we want to run Audacity. Cool. And there we go. We've got Audacity. Easy. Now we're going to switch over to art. So first off, we're going to cover what I use for pixel art. My tool of choice for pixel art is Aseprite. So if we go over to Aseprite, you can essentially download the trial, or I recommend supporting these developers and buying the software. It's not that expensive. Technically, I think you can go over to their GitHub and build the software from source if you don't want to pay them. But I've already got the version that I bought So if we head over here, I've already got it on this system. So we're going to see what's inside downloads. I've got the Aseprite.deb. So let's go over to downloads. And like we did before, we're going to run the Debian package -I for install and do Aseprite. Cool. So it's all downloaded already. So am I spelling it wrong? There we go. Aseprite. There we go. Perfect. Looks like it's running smoothly. Go ahead and pin to the panel. And we've got Aseprite. So pixel art's all taken care of. For more traditional art, my go-to when I was on my Windows system was I either use the Affinity application, so Affinity Photo or Affinity Designer or Affinity Design. I can't remember what it's called. Or I use Clip Studio Paint. Those applications do not have a native Linux version. They are only supported in Windows or Mac, or I believe Clip Studio Paint has an Android version, but not a Linux version. So there is technically ways to run Windows applications in Linux. And so if you guys stick around later in the video, I will attempt to get these Windows executables to run on my Linux system. But for now, we're going to skip those two, and I can show you some other alternatives to Affinity and Clip Studio Paint. So the first one that runs natively on Linux that quite a few people enjoy is Krita or Krita. I don't know how you pronounce it. Let me know in the comments. So see, they've got the little penguin here. They support Linux out of the box. So it's going to be an app image. So we've done an app image install already, so we know how that goes. We've got it installed. So I'm going to go over to programs and I'm going to make a new directory for Krita. Go over to Krita and we'll copy from our downloads. We've got this Krita app image right here. So like we did before, we've got to give it executable permissions so we can run it from the terminal window. And we give it a run. So Krita is something that I want to start using more of because you can also do 2D animations in Krita. And so it's probably one of those softwares that I do want to get better at and maybe start using more because it is free and it is open source. So I'll definitely give this program a try. We'll just wait for it to boot up here. All right, there we go. Krita is running. And so that's one option you can use for, traditional art. Kind of a Photoshop alternative that people like to use in Linux is Gimp. So Gimp is more of a photo editing, sort of Adobe Photoshop replacement. We'll go ahead and download it here. It says they have an app image. So we'll go ahead and grab the app image. So that's installing. Rinse and repeat. We'll go ahead and make a GIMP folder. Change to there. And then make sure our download's done. It's completed. Then we're going to copy over from downloads the GIMP. Copy it here. Give it executable permissions. And run the software. There we go. Now I've tried GIMP. in the past. I don't really enjoy it. It's definitely capable, and it is a fine replacement for Adobe. But I think the user interface, is a little tacky. And yeah, I've just never really liked it, but it is an option. So here you go. Here's Gimp. All right. So we've got Krita and Gimp. That'll take care of kind of the photo and two-dimensional art that we would want to do. As far as vector art, so think like Affinity Designer or Adobe Illustrator. When you work with vectors, a program that I actually do enjoy using that's free and open source is Inkscape. Got Inkscape right here. And we'll want to grab the GNU Linux. And once again, you could install it from the apt package repository here if you're running Ubuntu, which would probably work for Linux Mint. But we'll just go ahead and grab the apt image. So we'll go ahead, rinse and repeat. Make a folder for Inkscape, if I could spell. Copy from downloads. Inkscape. Give it executable permissions. All right. We'll see if that looks like it's running just fine. So this is Inkscape. You can do your vector stuff. All right, so that covers vector art. Now for our 3D art needs, what I used in the past is Blender 3D. Blender 3D is another open source free program for 3D modeling, and it is very powerful. Super awesome that this is free. And even better, it runs natively on Linux. So you see we've got the Linux. Go ahead and download Blender. So it is a compressed archive. So if we go into here, let's see, you're going to see that is a tar XZ right here. So it looks like I already had it in my downloads folder. So that's why we've got the one here for the copy. So what we can run is 7z extract. We'll extract tar.xz. All right, so that's one level of extraction. We'll go ahead and run that again, this time on the tar. All right. Looks like if it's highlighted here, or if the color's blue, that means it's a folder. So we've got a whole folder for Blender. I'm going to go ahead and switch to the programs folder. Let's make a Blender folder. Go over here. I'm going to copy. I'm going to move. So in Linux, if you copy, in order to copy a folder and all of its contents, you need to do a recursive copy. So copy-r. But just to make it easier, I'm going to use the move command. So this is essentially in Windows like a cut and paste. So we're going to go ahead and move that Blender folder, put it right here. Let's go inside. You got a bunch of files right here. If you want to know what they are, you can do file in the current directory with a wildcard. That'll tell us what each of these files are. So it looks like the one that's just called Blender is our executable. So we'll go ahead and run Blender. All right, cool. So Blender is working. There you go. You got your default cube and you are ready to 3D model. So last but not least, let's see if I can install Affinity and Clip Studio Paint on my Linux box. I don't need them because I do have alternatives, but I do enjoy them. I would prefer to have them. You know, I know a lot of people out there might be a couple of softwares that you currently use that are not supported on Linux, so it's kind of holding you back from switching. So we're going to see if we can install this. So in order to do that, we are going to download something called Wine. So we're going to search Wine Linux. So Wine is essentially a compatibility layer for Windows applications. And so when the code makes Windows system calls, Wine basically translates that to Linux system calls. You know, that's a very high level explanation. It's probably more detailed than that, and maybe that's not totally accurate, but so we're going to try to run these through Wine. So if I go over to download right here, like I said, if you're running Linux Mint is based off Ubuntu. Ubuntu is based off Debian. So this will tell you how to get Wine. We'll go ahead and copy this to the clipboard. All right. Once we go down here, we are running Linux Mint 22. So we need to enable the 32-bit repository. We'll go and copy that into our terminal window. And then we're going to add the source file to our sources list for app. We'll go ahead, copy that. All right, now we've done that part. So now go ahead and do a sudo apt update. So this will update our package list. So we'll go ahead and update that. You can see that we've got the line for Wine HQ right here. And then now that that list is updated, we can install right here. So we'll probably go with the stable branch. So we'll copy this. And go ahead and install that. So this will probably take a while. All right, that installation's complete. So when you're going to install something through Wine, what I recommend is to search online and see if someone's written up a guide. So I'm going to go ahead, Clip Studio Paint. We're going to start with Clip Studio Paint. So CSP on Linux. Look like here's something on GitHub. How to install and use Clip Studio Paint on Linux. Linux Mint by default has Flatpak. So here in the software manager, that's essentially where you install Flatpak applications. So we don't need to install any Flatpak. It says once you've installed Flatpak, you need to search for an application called Bottles. So Bottles is a way to kind of separate your Wine installs. If you just use Wine through the command line, then all of your applications, unless you do some extra work, they're all going to share the same environment. Bottles lets you basically, for each application you install, you can have a separate environment to run it in. So it's a little cleaner of a way to do it. You might run into less problems. All right, now that it's ready, I'm going to go ahead and search Bottles and run Windows software right here. So you can see it's a Flatpak application. We'll go ahead and install it. Now, I've read this particular guide before. I'm probably just going to minimize it and go through the installation with you guys. But I will put in the description links to these guides. All right. So the Flatpak is installed of Bottles. So we'll go ahead and launch that. Do you like Bottles? I don't know. I haven't tried it yet. Welcome to Bottles, blah, 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 continue. Gonna set it up for us. All right, let's start using bottles. First thing we're gonna do in the top right, we're gonna go to preferences, and then we're gonna go over to runners. And so runners are essentially the variants of wine that you're going to run. If you guys have used Steam on like a Steam Deck or Steam on Linux, Steam kind of has their own version of wine, or it's based on wine called Proton. And so these are kind of the different versions of wine, or the different flavors or forks or whatever you want to call it. We'll go in. So the nice thing about running applications in this bottles software is you can pick a different runner or like a different version of wine for different softwares. So certain softwares might run better with certain runners. So it kind of gives you that flexibility. So the guide tells us to install this Cafe 9.2. All right, now that that's installed, we can go ahead and close this out. We're now going to click on the plus and make a bottle. We'll go ahead and name this Clip Studio Paint. And we will choose the custom option. And that will let us choose our runner. So we'll go ahead and select that Cafe 9.2 that we just installed. And we will leave these as default. Go ahead and create that. And we will wait while it creates the bottle. I will fast forward the video. Now that's been created. If we go to our bottles, you can see we have one for Clip Studio Paint. Let's go inside here. And we need to go over to settings. Down to compatibility. And the guide says that it runs better with Windows 8.1. We'll go ahead and switch it to Windows 8.1. All right, now that we've changed that, we'll go back and then down to dependencies. So these are kind of other Microsoft libraries or programs that you might need inside your wine environment to run. This guide mentions to grab all fonts. We'll go ahead and install that. Fast forward the video once that's done. All right, right here it said it was installed. So we'll go ahead and close that out. You can see that we have it downloaded now. The guide also recommends to install Gecko. We've got Gecko right here. All right, Gecko is installed. Next thing we need to install is Mono. All right, Mono is installed, and then the last thing they recommend installing is the Microsoft Visual C++ redistributable, the 2022. We'll go ahead and grab that. All right, that's been installed. So we have installed everything we need to. So now we're ready to launch the executable. But before that, we need to actually go grab the executable. So you would just go to Clip Studio Paint. You could just grab a free trial. You wanted to test it out. Go to downloads here. The version I was rocking on my Windows system was like version 1. I would go ahead and grab this, the Windows version of that. I've already got that in my download folders here. Once you've got that downloaded, we'll click on this. No, that's not what I want. We'll run executable. And then it's going to ask us where the executable is at. So if we go to our downloads, I've got the Clip Studio Paint version 1.132. So we will give it to bottles. And so you can see it is running the Windows installer for Clip Studio Paint inside of Linux. So that is very cool. I accept the license agreement. And basically it's kind of made like a mock file system for Windows on your system. So the installer thinks it has a C program files, but in all reality it doesn't. We will continue with the installation. So we'll go ahead and install. All right, that's finished installing. So we'll go ahead and hit finish. So we go back and then we go back into here. You'll see that under programs, we now have Clip Studio installed. So you can launch it from here. However, the guide did say that for some reason with Clip Studio, this was having issues. So to get around that, they added a different shortcut for it. So you'll notice that it puts us right here in our file path. So this is basically the C drive. So the C drive under Wine. So if we go into the C drive, program files, Celsys, Clip Studio Paint, we've got the exe to launch Clip Studio. So we'll go ahead and make a shortcut for Clip Studio Paint. For whatever reason, the one that Bottles makes is a little buggy. So now that we've got that new shortcut, we'll go ahead and launch. And if we're lucky, we will be able to run Clip Studio in Linux. So no. I do have a license key, but for this video, we'll just go ahead and try it out. Offline. So for whatever reason, it's not able to connect to the store or marketplace or whatever that is. But that's probably okay. All right, it's finished setting up, and here you go. Clip Studio Paint running in Linux through Wine. So yeah, I'm sure because it's not running natively, we may run into hiccups. There may be some weird performance glitches, but this is a great start, and I will let you guys know in the future if I run into any issues, but we have Clip Studio Paint, so that is awesome. So now that we've got Clip Studio Paint installed, we're going to see if we can get Affinity to run on Linux as well. So yeah, it looks like they've got a whole guide for Affinity on Linux. And Affinity used to be split up into Photo, Designer, and I never used this one. I can't remember what that's called. InDesign or something. But now Canva, the company, purchased Affinity. And so now it's all rolled into one app called Affinity right here. We're going to see if this is able to run on Linux. And so this guide has a way to do it through, just the normal Wine, or you can use different type of Wine launchers. Since we already have Bottles installed, we'll go ahead and click on that. And then this basically walks you through how to set it up. It looks like you need a custom runner. So not one that's probably built into the list you can download it from in bottles. So it tells you to go download one of these. And then you need to copy what you downloaded, this runner, and place it inside the runners folder right here. And then you go ahead and add your bottle. So let's give that a try. All right, so I've already installed, we'll go ahead and show you right here. I've already installed that custom runner. So if we go to the downloads, you can see that I have this Elemental Warrior wine right here. And then also the guide asks you to install this win metadata file right here. I've already got those two here. I guess one thing I do want to cover is if you go to install Affinity, we go to the download here. When you go to install this, you'll want the exe file. So if you just choose this Windows right here, it'll give you a .msi file, and that's not the one you want. So go ahead and click on this enterprise version, and that will give you the .exe. I don't really know why they call it enterprise. It's a little confusing, but you'll definitely want to click on this. And once you do so, you will then get the affinity.exe file right here. So once you have all the prerequisite stuff downloaded, we'll kind of do what we did last time. And we are at our home. And so we'll change to this where the runners are. You can see it's got the Cafe 9.2 that we downloaded. And so we are going to copy over from downloads the Elemental Warrior runner that we had. And so now that that's there, we'll go ahead and extract it here and extract that one more time. All right, so now that we've got a folder called Elemental Warrior Wine, so that's what's needed to be in this folder path. So now I'll go ahead and remove or delete the other archives that are still here. There we go. Now all we have is the folder there. So that should be all ready for us. And then the other thing I forgot to mention is there from that same person that made the wine fork, there's also a configuration script for this affinity.ew.yaml file. So we also need that, and I have that installed already, but you can grab it right here. So now that that's all ready, we will go into bottles and we will create one, call it Affinity, do the custom. For the runner, I might have to restart bottles because that elemental runner's not showing up. So let's go ahead and restart bottles and see if it shows up now. All right, let's try that again. We'll go Affinity, Custom, and there we go. The Elemental Warrior Wine shows up. And we want to import the configuration. So if we go to downloads, I have this .yaml file. Now that we've got the configuration, and the runner. We're going to go ahead and create that. So the configuration file basically tells wine or bottles how to create the bottle. So during this step right here, that configuration file is telling it to do certain things in addition to the standard stuff that bottles does typically. So we'll wait for this to finish. All right, finally that finished. So now you can see we have a bottle for Clip Studio Paint. We have a bottle for Affinity. Before we run the installer, the guide recommends placing the contents of a zip archive on the C drive, the System32 folder. So to do that, go ahead, bring up this. Make sure we can see hidden files here. So we'll go to downloads. We'll take this win metadata zip. Go ahead and extract that folder. So we've got this. We will copy it. And then you go to your home in this .var. So in Linux, when there's a dot in front of a file name or a folder, that means it's hidden. So if you go over to view, show hidden files, you'll be able to see this var. We go into there, app, you'll see this bottles. Those are our bottles. Go into data, bottles, bottles. You can see the two bottles we've made. So if we go into Affinity, here's our C drive. We'll go to C drive, Windows, System32. And then right here, we'll go ahead and paste that win metadata. So now that we've got that there, we can go into here and hit run executable. Go to our downloads, find this affinity.exe. So we can see the Affinity installer. It's going to place it in C, program files, Affinity, Affinity. I don't think it'll be able to create a shortcut on the desktop through the installer. I'll just go ahead and uncheck that. All right, setup completed successfully. And it shows up Affinity right here. And we will cross our fingers, press launch. And Affinity is launching. Just doing A4. And there we go. We have Affinity, the new version of Affinity by Canva, and it is running in Linux. So I think that really covers most of the software that I typically run in my game dev workflow. And so, yeah, I didn't really have any problem switching over to Linux. It was pretty straightforward. If you guys tuned into the entire video, I really appreciate it. If you guys are interested in game dev with Godot or in Linux or both, please feel free to subscribe to the channel. I plan on doing more videos. I might do more tutorials in Linux, start streaming. I've got lots of things planned for this year. I'm right now working on a prototype for my first commercial game. So I'm excited to share details on that when it's ready. But that's all for this video. I will see you guys next time.